Well, hello and welcome to Crowd Church's non-live live stream here in August. My name is Matt, and I just wanted to jump on here before we get into the talk and let you know what's going on. Now, this isn't your usual crowd service, and that, if I'm honest, is completely intentional. If you are a regular to Crowd, you will have twigged that this isn't the usual live. There's no me fluffing lines or figuring out technical difficulties or Anna laughing at me when I do because something has gone completely wrong. And you definitely won't be getting Conversation Street today. But here's the thing. August for Crowd is different, isn't it? So it's different for everybody. Half of us usually are somewhere hot trying to forget what the weather's like back home, especially if you live in England. And the other half is wondering why we didn't book something ages ago. So instead of pretending everything's normal, we've done something a bit different. Yes, we like to do the non-live live streams in August where the whole team gets to rest and recuperate, but we obviously still want to put stuff out for people to connect with. And this year, our August talks are pre-recorded as usual, the non-live live stream. You can watch them whenever you like, whether that's Sunday morning with, a cup of tea, or Wednesday afternoon when you're avoiding doing something important, whenever we just might. This August, we're exploring something called sacred rhythms, looking at how biblical festivals offer us a completely different approach to rest, to celebration, and actually living life well. I thought this would be a really good thing to study whilst we do our normal holidays. Like, what does the Bible have to say about taking a holiday? And in a culture that's obsessed with, working ourselves into the ground and then collapsing for 2 weeks somewhere with overpriced cocktails, maybe, just maybe, the Bible has a better way. Maybe there's some ancient celebration that knew something that we've forgotten about. Like, what does it actually mean to truly rest and to celebrate and to recover? So that's why we're doing this. So settle in. This one's just for you. No pressure to participate. No need to unmute yourself. Just space to think about how God might want to reshape the rhythms of your life. So let's dive in.
Good evening. Today's talk is titled Ancient Wisdom for Modern Chaos. US forefather Benjamin Franklin is famous for saying, "In this world, nothing is certain except death, taxes, and change." When you think about it, death and taxes, pretty specific. Change, on the other hand, it's a very wide topic and a very uncertain topic. Now, I don't think anyone will argue that we live in an uncertain world. If we look at the last 5 years, there's been a lot of big world events that have hit us back at home, pretty much no matter where we are. We had lockdown and COVID-19. Who could have imagined we would have literally locked countries down for extended periods of time? And the impact of that, long COVID, mental health, increased shipping costs, meaning businesses struggling, and ultimately unemployment. We've had Brexit. Again, who could have predicted that outcome? But that has resulted in more unemployment, increased goods cost, travel restrictions, and over here, even some increased racism. Top of that has been the Ukraine war, again, something we never would have imagined in this day and age. And it's impacting us back at home with increased petrol costs, a destabilized global economy, and an influx of refugees. More recently, the US tariff war. Again, increased goods cost, in some cases leading to unemployment. In the UK, we've had a recent government change, and their recent budget, again, you've guessed it, led to increased unemployment and also public morale going down. In light of all this, we've had the cost of living crisis, which is ongoing, and issues with climate change and the web. Now, all of these things impact or have the ability to impact our mental health. Now, the uncertainties that we face are regularly reinforced to us by the media. Now, a survey was done last year by PQ Media, a company that look at those kind of data analytics, and they found on average, people spend 28 hours watching TV a week. And if we were to expand that to all forms of traditional and digital media, so newspapers, radio, TV, socials, all that stuff. 57 hours a week on average. Now, that seems quite a lot when you think, well, we have about 112 waking hours a week, assuming we're sleeping 8 hours a night. Nearly half of that we are being exposed to media, or allowing ourselves to be exposed to media on average. Now, media tends to have a negative bias. And I'm not just saying that, there are plenty of studies backing it up. London School of Economics, in a recent blog post, showed how magazine sales go up 30% with a negative cover. Cambridge University, in a study on social media, showed users are twice as likely to share negative news. And I think if that isn't bad enough, the impact of this can be quite substantial. Now, this is illustrated really well in a study the University of California did on the Boston Marathon bombings. Now, these happened back in 2013. Quite close to the finish line, a couple of homemade bombs were detonated. This resulted in 3 dead and 264 people injured. The focus of the study was really looking at the impact of media versus being directly exposed to it. So how people were impacted just by being told about the event to actually living through it. And interestingly, they found that 6+ hours of exposure to bombing-related media actually gave more acute stress than living through the bombings in person. The implications of this being mass media may spread negative consequences of trauma beyond directly affected communities. This brings us to our problem. We live in a highly uncertain world, exasperated by negative media, and it's impacting our mental health to one degree or another. If ever there was a time we needed some guidance from the Bible, this is definitely one of those times. And we're going to look at a few relevant biblical concepts, and they are viewing uncertainty in context, having a virtuous and positive focus, taking time out in a simplistic manner. Philippians 3:20 says, "For our citizenship is in heaven, from which we also eagerly wait for a Saviour, the Lord Jesus Christ." Our earthly citizenship is finite. Heavenly citizenship is eternal. So our earthly struggles are going to be short-lived by comparison. Now, 2 Corinthians 5:20 refers to us as ambassadors for Christ. And ambassadors live and represent their nation in a foreign land. So whatever we are going through here, it is as we are going through in a foreign land. Heaven is ultimately where we belong. Philippians 4:8 says, "Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things." Now that's a very positive focus. Now when we think about these aspects from the biblical context, when we say true, we mean something that reflects God's character, his words, or his actions. When we talk about noble, we think of high moral character, of integrity. When we speak about right, something that conforms to God's will, law, and character. Think about pure, we think about something that is free from moral corruption. How many things in the media are we seeing free from moral corruption? When we think about lovely, we think about things which are pleasing and beautiful in both physical appearance and character. And finally, admirable, we're thinking about something that is worthy of respect and admiration due to it reflecting God's character. Now, we have a certain amount of control in the things that we absorb. We tend to think about what's around us. We have some control over that. The more positive content and things we absorb, the less time. Now, I'm not saying that we just stick our heads in the sand and avoid the negativity, but where we can look at things which are pure, good, right, and positive. It will help us. Again, thinking back to the example of the Boston Marathon bombing study. So if the impact of 6 or so hours negative media had greater stress, what would the impact of something truly positive had in its place? And finally, when we think about taking time out, Leviticus 23:33-44 talks about Sukkot, also known as the Feast of Tabernacles. Reading from verse 33, "Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, The 15th day of the 7th month shall be the Feast of the Tabernacle for 7 days to the Lord. On the first day there shall be a holy convocation. You shall do no customary work on it. For 7 days you shall offer an offering made by fire to the Lord. On the 8th day you shall have a holy convocation, and you shall offer an offering made by fire to the Lord. It is a sacred assembly, and you shall do no customary work on it." Later in verse 42, it talks about dwelling in booths. "You shall dwell in booths for 7 days. All of you who are native Israelites shall dwell in booths, that your generations may know I made the children of Israel dwell in booths. When I brought them out of the land of Egypt, I am Lord your God." So the word holiday comes from holy day. And the function of these things were to be a living experiential reminder of God's relationship with his people. They also commemorated significant events, and they were often a public holiday as well where no work was done. Now, in the case of Sukkot, the Feast of the Tabernacles, it was commemorating time in the desert and also being thankful for the harvest. Just if we think about this now in terms of the emerging trend in holidays that we're seeing, well, there's a lot of financial pressure, based around expensive holidays, expensive gifts. EasyJet did a recent what they called the Great British Holiday Audit, and they said on average people go on 3 trips a year. Okay, the main holiday costing £3,000. That's just the main one. When we think about other trends these days, we tend to overschedule holidays, and that can create a lot of pressure. And then there's the pressure of social media getting those perfect holiday pictures. And the impact of all of this is not the relaxing holiday you would hope for. It actually can create anxiety and depression, especially in people who already have pre-existing mental issues. It can create burnout on holiday. And it can also strain the relationships of the people who are going on holiday. Coming back to Sukkot, it's, like I say, a celebration of the harvest and commemorating the harvest. The focus is on God, and it's really this community experience. So they're doing no work on the 1st and the 8th days, prioritizing rest. They're dwelling in booths, which are very simplistic tents, and there's not much else happening there. There's coming together as a nation for different worship ceremonies, and eating together, and just experiencing community. Something we can really learn from this is when we take time out, it's important that we unplug, that we keep it simple. We find joy in the simple things and simple experiences and God's presence. When we look at how popular culture deals with uncertainty versus how the Bible deals with uncertainty, we can see some significant differences. So popular culture is all about controlling the circumstance. It's safety and money and possessions. It's insurance policies. Its ultimate focus is on material things, whereas biblically it's all about embracing the uncertainty. Very often God will change our hearts and our attitudes rather than the circumstances that are happening around us. And ultimately the focus of this is on him. So where do we go from here? We've seen some biblical concepts, which, let's face it, they're really in line with stuff we know. I mean, how many times have we been told to put our problems into perspective? Just get away from focusing on them, just taking a step back and viewing in a wider concept. We're all familiar with the popular phrase, garbage in, garbage out. Well, surely positive in, positive out, and certainly the science reflects that when it comes to psychology. And then finally, just taking time out in a simplistic, chilled manner. Back to the days when holidays were relaxed and not overcrowded and overcrammed. The tools are all there. We just need to use them. It might mean going against the grain and being a bit different. Are we prepared to? Are you prepared to? Now, speaking from experience, my wife and I are literally living through this right now, and that's aside from all the stuff that's happening outside in the world that we've talked about that are influencing us. In the last year or so, my wife has come down with moderate to severe ME, and when I say come down, actually regressed to that stage. It's really gotten worse in the last 12 months, and so her life is full of fatigue, cognitive dysfunction, sleep disturbance, muscular and neurological pain. Whenever she even tries to push herself just a tiny bit, we get this post-exertional malaise, which just elevates all the symptoms and leaves her hardly able to move. So the reality is her days are spent sitting in a recliner chair, or a wheelchair, or a bed. The prognosis is long-term, indefinite. It's under-researched, it's unpredictable, there is no cure. Best case scenario, she might get a tiny bit better. Worst case scenario, she'll get a lot worse and end up being fed through a tube. So as you can imagine, we've had to make some pretty significant changes in our life and to really put things into perspective. And so for us, we've had to acknowledge that, this could be it for our earthly lives. There was a grieving process we went through. And if I'm 100% honest, I might still be going through it. But we recognize this is short in terms of our days here on earth, but not in heaven. We try and keep things positive. We avoid looking at the news too much. We have minimal interaction on social media, and we focus on what we can do in the space that we have left now that our lives have gotten much, much smaller and more limited. And a lot of this stuff is observational. We've never taken the time to go to wildlife sanctuaries and to just sit there and watch nature. We spend more time watching movies than we used to and appreciating that. It's all positive things that we can do. And when it comes to taking time out, now that one's a bit of a hard one because I've become my wife's primary carer, and so even if I stopped my job and work, I'm still doing that job. And for her, as a patient, well, life is kind of like a timeout. She's not able to do things anyway, so life is one big rest, for the want of a better word. But it's always chilled, and it's never overscheduled. Goodness, we can't do that because we'll make it worse. So, as you can see, we have actually taken the concepts that we've discussed here, which are biblical, applied them to our lives, and yes, they have helped us manage mentally, physically, and emotionally what it is that we have to deal with. So that's all I have for you this evening, or this morning, depending where you are in the world. Have a wonderful rest of your day. God bless.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And there we are, the end of this particular talk. Now, if you're a regular to Crowd, this is a bit where we go into Conversation Street. But like I said at the start, we're not doing that during August in our what we call the non-live live streams, where the team is just taking some well-earned rest and just hanging with their families. But do stay with us as we talk about holidays and rhythms and rest throughout August. And maybe there's just a different way to the standard default. Maybe, God's got an idea or two that we could learn from, ways that God has designed life to perhaps work better for us. I think he probably has. Maybe this week you want to try, something from the talk. What stood out to you? It might not even be dramatic. It could be just a tiny step towards that kind of rhythm that actually brings you life rather than draining it. What is it going to be? If you're still watching this, write it in the comments. Even though we're not live, it's always good just to write things down. And of course, you can reach us on our website at www.crowd.church. Now, we're going to be back next Sunday with another talk. If it's in August, it's going to be an on-live live stream. If this is the last talk in August, we'll be back to the usual way of doing things in September. But in August, do stay with us as we continue journeying through the sacred rhythms, same time, same non-live stream approach. So that's it. But for now, wherever you are, whatever living room you're watching this, or wherever you're on a beach, on a plane, we don't mind. That's the beautiful thing about digital church. Just remember that rest isn't something you have to earn. It's something that God simply gives you. See you next week.